The diplomatic chamber aboard the Galactic Council station hung in silence, thick with tension and unspoken desperation. Ambassador Kelvin Ross stood at the central podium, his hands gripping the edges so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Around him, representatives from 47 different species watched with varying degrees of sympathy, contempt, and cold calculation. The holographic displays flickered with data streams, translating his words into thousands of languages simultaneously. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for only 12 years. 12 short years since first contact, since Earth had learned it was far from alone in the universe, since they had been welcomed with cautious optimism into a community spanning hundreds of worlds. Those years had been filled with wonder, with learning, with the slow and careful process of finding their place among civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia. Now it was all about to end. The Zakthron Empire had issued its ultimatum 3 weeks ago. Their massive war fleet, comprising over 10,000 vessels, had positioned itself at the edge of human territory. The message had been simple and brutal. Surrender completely. Allow the Zakthron to occupy Earth and all human colonies, submit to slavery and resource extraction, or be annihilated. No negotiation, no middle ground. Complete submission or total destruction. The Zakthron were not known for making empty threats. In the past 2 centuries, they had conquered 17 different species. Some had submitted immediately, and now existed as little more than livestock, bred for labor and biological materials. Others had fought. Their worlds were now lifeless rocks, their civilizations erased from existence so thoroughly that only ruins and radiation remained as proof they had ever existed at all. Humanity had tried everything. They had appealed to the Galactic Council, only to be met with sympathetic words and zero action. The Council had protocols, procedures, committees that would need to convene. The paperwork alone would take years. By then, Earth would be ashes. They had attempted to form defensive alliances, but every species they approached politely declined. None wanted to risk Zakthron retaliation for the sake of the newest and weakest member of the galactic community. Ambassador Ross had spent sleepless nights reviewing every option, every possibility. Earth's military, while impressive by human standards, was nothing compared to the Zakthron armada. Humanity had barely begun to understand the principles of faster-than-light travel. Their weapons were primitive compared to species that had been refining warfare technology for thousands of years. In a straight fight, Earth would last perhaps 6 hours before orbital bombardment reduced every major city to rubble. But there was one possibility. One slim, terrifying, desperate possibility. The Drakthorn. Even saying the name caused several council members to shift uncomfortably in their seats. The Drakthorn were legends throughout the galaxy, spoken of in whispers and warnings. They were massive creatures, dragon-like beings that had existed long before most current civilizations had crawled from their oceans. They lived on worlds at the edge of mapped space, in systems so remote that few had ever seen one and returned to tell of it. The Drakthorn were not part of the Galactic Council. They had no interest in politics, in trade agreements, in the petty concerns of younger species. They kept to themselves, isolated and separate. But they were known to offer protection, to take species under their guardianship. The cost for such protection was steep and always the same: a child. Not just any child, but one given freely, offered without coercion, surrendered willingly by their people to be raised by the Drakthorn. The child would never return. They would become something other than what they had been, shaped by the ancient dragons into something new. No one knew exactly what happened to these children. The few species who had accepted Drakthorn protection refused to speak of it, their representatives falling silent whenever the topic arose, their expressions haunted. But those species still existed. Their worlds were intact, their people free. and no empire, no matter how powerful, dared to threaten a world under Drakthorn guardianship. Ambassador Ross had brought the proposal before Earth's governments. The debate had been fierce, agonizing. Philosophers had argued about the ethics. Religious leaders had condemned it as sacrifice. Parents had wept at the very thought. But in the end, when the alternative was the complete extinction of humanity, the vote had passed. Barely. By the slimmest of margins. Now came the hardest part. The ambassador took a deep breath and activated his communication device. A face appeared on the screen, young but with eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the human vessel Endeavor, currently holding position near the edge of Drakthorn space. "Ambassador," she said quietly. Her voice carried through the chamber, translated instantly for all to hear. "Captain Chen, have you received the authorization codes?" "I have, sir." There was a long pause. "Sir, are we really doing this?" Ross closed his eyes briefly. "Unless the Zakthron fleet suddenly has a change of heart in the next 4 hours, yes, we are really doing this." Another pause. Then, "Understood. We'll proceed to the coordinates." The screen flickered and changed, showing the interior of the Endeavor's crew quarters. A small figure sat on a bunk, looking far too tiny in the military-grade space. Emma Rodriguez was 7 years old. She had light brown skin, dark eyes, and hair pulled back in a neat braid. She wore a simple blue jumpsuit, and she clutched a stuffed elephant that looked nearly as old as she was. A collective murmur ran through the council chamber. Several species, particularly those with strong parental bonds, made sounds of distress. The Vrixian delegate actually stood up as if to protest, then slowly sat back down, mandibles clicking in agitation. Emma had volunteered. The very concept had seemed absurd when it was first suggested. How could a child possibly understand what they were volunteering for? How could such a choice be anything other than coerced by circumstance? But Emma had surprised everyone. When the possibility had been explained to her in terms she could understand, when she had been told honestly that this meant she would never see her parents again, never come home, she had simply nodded and said she would do it. Her parents had been devastated. They had argued against it, had demanded other options, had pleaded. But Emma had been strangely resolute. She had told them that if she could save everyone, save all the children on Earth, save her little brother who was only 3, then she wanted to do it. She didn't fully understand the Drakthorn, couldn't comprehend what would happen to her, but she understood that everyone she loved would die if she did nothing. The psychological evaluations had been extensive. Experts had examined her, had tried to understand how a 7-year-old could make such a decision. Some argued she was too young to consent to anything so permanent. Others pointed out that she would die along with everyone else if they did nothing. So what did she truly have to lose, except the manner of her survival? In the end, her parents had given their permission. It was the hardest thing they had ever done. They had held her for hours, had recorded videos for her to take along, had told her they loved her more times than could possibly be counted. Then they had let her go. Now the entire galaxy was watching as humanity prepared to do what so few species had ever been desperate enough to attempt. The Endeavor moved slowly toward the designated coordinates. The Drakthorn had sent a single message in response to humanity's request, a location in space, a time, and a simple confirmation that they would consider the offer. No promises, no guarantees, just a willingness to meet. Captain Chen's face reappeared on the screen. "Ambassador, we're approaching the coordinates now. Sensors are showing something massive ahead, but it's unlike anything in our databases." The feed switched to the ship's external cameras. At first, there was only the black of space, stars scattered like diamonds on velvet. Then something moved, and scale became impossible to judge. What had seemed like a small object was actually enormous, so large that the human mind struggled to process its dimensions. The Drakthorn emerged from behind a moon. It was a dragon in the way that a hurricane was wind. The body stretched for miles, covered in scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each scale was the size of a building, colored in deep purples and blacks that shifted like oil on water. The head alone was larger than the Endeavor, with eyes that glowed with an inner light, ancient and knowing and utterly alien. Wings that could have wrapped around a planet were folded against its sides, and a tail longer than could be seen on the view screen disappeared into the darkness. The council chamber was silent. Even species that had read about the Drakthorn, that had seen recordings, were struck by the reality of the creature before them. This was not some animal, not some simple beast. The intelligence in those eyes was palpable even across the transmission, a presence that pressed against the mind. The dragon spoke, and its voice resonated through every speaker, through the hull of the Endeavor, through the bodies of everyone listening. It did not speak any known language, yet everyone understood perfectly. The words bypassed translation technology and spoke directly to something deeper, something primal. You are the humans. It was not a question. Captain Chen responded anyway, her voice remarkably steady. We are. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Endeavor. We come seeking your protection. We know why you come. The Zakthron fleet gathers to destroy you. You are weak, young, barely capable of reaching your own moon when we were already ancient. Why should we care if you cease to exist? The bluntness of the statement hit like a physical blow. Ambassador Ross found his voice. Because every species deserves a chance to grow, to learn, to exist. We have only just discovered the larger universe. We have so much potential, so much we could contribute. The Zakthron would erase all of that for resources and slave labor. The galaxy is full of species with potential. Many die before realizing it. This is the nature of existence. The strong persist. The weak perish. You ask us to interfere in this natural process. We offer the compact, Ross said, his voice stronger now. The old agreement. A child of our people given freely for your protection and guidance. This is not interference. This is the continuation of a tradition older than the Galactic Council itself. The dragon's eyes seemed to focus, to pierce through the transmission, to examine each being in the council chamber individually. You speak of tradition, yet you barely understand what you offer. Do you know what becomes of the children given to us? No, Ross admitted, but we trust that you do not harm them. No species that has accepted your protection speaks ill of the outcome. They do not speak of it at all. The dragon's mouth opened slightly, revealing teeth like towers. It might have been a smile. But yes, the children are not harmed. They are transformed, made into something greater than what they were, something necessary. You will never see this child again. She will not contact you. She will not remember you in ways you would recognize. She will become Drakthorn, in spirit, if not in body. Do you accept this? Ambassador Ross looked at the screen showing Emma. She was standing now, still holding her elephant, looking at the camera with those wide, trusting eyes. She waved at him, a small gesture that broke his heart. We accept, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Then bring the child forward. Let us see what humanity offers. Captain Chen appeared on screen again. She walked to Emma's quarters, knelt down in front of the little girl. They spoke quietly for a moment, words not picked up by the microphones. Chen hugged Emma tightly, then stood and took her hand. Together they walked through the corridors of the Endeavor to the airlock. A small spacesuit had been prepared, modified for Emma's size. Chen helped her into it, checked every seal twice, then 3 times. She attached a tether and opened the airlock. Emma stepped out into the void, floating gently in the darkness, small and fragile and impossibly brave. The dragon moved closer. Its massive head approached the Endeavor, dwarfing the entire vessel. One enormous eye focused on the tiny figure in the spacesuit. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the dragon spoke again, but this time the words were meant only for Emma. Those listening heard only silence, saw only the little girl nodding, her mouth moving in response to words they could not perceive. The dragon opened its mouth, and light spilled out, gentle and warm and utterly unlike anything humanity had seen before. The light touched Emma, surrounded her, lifted her from the tether. She did not struggle. She did not cry out. She simply floated toward that vast mouth, still clutching her elephant, and then she was gone, taken into the dragon's maw, into whatever future awaited her beyond human understanding. The dragon's eyes closed briefly, then opened with something that might have been satisfaction. It spoke once more to the council, to humanity, to all those who watched. "The compact is sealed. Humanity is under our protection. The Zachthron will be informed. They will not trouble you again. See that you are worthy of what this child has given." Then the dragon turned, its massive body moving with impossible grace, and it vanished into the darkness between stars, taking Emma Rodriguez with it. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some species cheered humanity's salvation. Others argued about the ethics, the morality, the implications. Ambassador Ross simply sank into his chair, his entire body shaking. They had done it. Humanity would survive. But a 7-year-old girl had paid the price, and he would carry that weight until his dying day. The Zachthron War Council had gathered in the throne chamber of their flagship, the Crimson Devastation. General Thaxcar sat upon his command throne, his 4 arms resting on the ornate armrests carved from the bones of conquered species. His exoskeleton gleamed blood red under the harsh lights, and his compound eyes reflected the holographic displays that surrounded him, showing the positioning of his vast fleet. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The human fleet, pathetic as it was, had remained exactly where intelligence predicted. They had made no attempt to evacuate their worlds, no significant military mobilization beyond what their limited resources allowed. They were paralyzed, exactly as intended. Fear was always the best weapon before the first shot was even fired. Admiral Cressivin stood before the throne, her secondary arms gesturing at the tactical displays. "My general, all fleets report ready status. The bombardment pattern is prepared. We estimate 6 hours to completely neutralize human military capabilities. Then 3 days for full planetary subjugation. Resistance is expected to be minimal." Thaxcar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. "And their appeals to the council?" "Rejected, as expected. The council will not interfere. Several species have filed formal protests, but these are purely for appearance. No one will act." Cressvan's voice held contempt. "The humans made the same mistake every weak species makes. They assumed membership in the council meant protection. They forgot that protection must be earned through strength." "Excellent. Then we proceed on schedule. In 1 week, Earth will be ours, and the humans will learn what it means to stand against the Zachthron Empire. Their water worlds will provide excellent resources for our breeding colonies, and their biological diversity will supplement our genetic databases nicely." The general was about to give the order to advance when a communication officer's console began shrieking an alarm. The sound was one rarely heard on Zachthron vessels, reserved only for extreme priority messages from the highest levels of command. "General," the officer's voice cracked slightly, "we are receiving an official notification from the Drakthorn." The throne room fell silent. Every Zachthron present turned toward the communication station. Thaxcar rose slowly from his throne, his posture changing from relaxed confidence to something far more rigid. "The Drakthorn?" His voice was carefully controlled, but those who knew him well could detect the edge of concern. Confirm the source. Already confirmed, my general. The encryption is ancient protocol, verification codes that cannot be faked. It is genuine. Display it. The holographic projectors flickered, and text appeared, simple and direct. The message was written in the old script, a universal language dating back to the earliest days of spacefaring civilization, so ancient that it predated the Galactic Council itself. Be it known to all who see this message, the species known as humanity is under the protection of the Drak'Tharn. They have accepted the compact according to ancient tradition. Any act of aggression against humanity or their worlds will be considered an act of aggression against the Drak'Tharn themselves. This protection is absolute and eternal, signed in blood and flame. Thaxkar read the message 3 times, then he read it again. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of severe agitation. Around the throne room, his command staff had gone completely silent, their exoskeletons paling to lighter shades. When was this message sent? His voice was quiet now, dangerously so. 17 minutes ago, General. It was transmitted on all official channels simultaneously. Every government, every military command, every major organization in the galaxy received it at the same moment. Admiral Cressivon spoke, her voice uncertain. My general, surely this is some kind of deception, some human trick? The Drak'Tharn have not intervened in galactic affairs for over 1,000 years. They have not accepted a new species under protection in nearly as long. The Drak'Tharn do not engage in deception, Thaxkar said flatly. They have no need for it. If they say the humans are under their protection, then it is so. He turned to face his command staff, his 4 arms spreading wide. Recall all fleets immediately. We are withdrawing from human space. General, Cressivon's voice held shock. We have 10,000 vessels positioned for attack. Our entire strategy has been built around this conquest. The resources alone are not worth extinction, Thaxkar roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. You think I give this order lightly? You think I fear some legend from ancient history? The Drak'Tharn destroyed the Vorshak's dominion 2,000 years ago. The Vorshaks had a fleet 3 times the size of ours, with technology we still cannot fully comprehend. They attacked a Drak'Tharn-protected world thinking the old dragons had grown weak with age. He paused, letting that sink in. The Drak'Tharn response was swift. They did not send a fleet. They did not engage in battle. 3 adult Drak'Tharn simply flew to the Vorshak's homeworld and tore it apart, literally. They ripped the planet into chunks and scattered it across its solar system. Then they hunted down every Vorshak's colony, every military installation, every ship. Within 1 month, the Vorshak's dominion ceased to exist. Their species went from a population of 40 billion to functionally extinct. The Drak'Tharn left exactly 1,000 Vorshaks alive, sterilized and scattered across different worlds, so they could tell the story of what happens when you violate Drak'Tharn protection. The throne room remained silent. Every Zakthron present knew the story, had heard it as a cautionary tale, but hearing it spoken aloud in their current context made it feel immediate and terrifying. Recall. All. Fleets. Thaxkar spoke each word separately, clearly. We withdraw from human space immediately and completely. Send formal notification to the humans that the Zakthron Empire recognizes the Drak'Tharn protection and will not violate it. Then send a message to our home system. The High Council needs to know that we barely avoided the destruction of our entire civilization. The orders went out. Across human space, the massive Zakthron war fleet began to withdraw, ships moving away from their attack positions with speed that suggested panic more than military discipline. Within 3 hours, every Zakthron vessel had departed human territory, leaving nothing behind but sensor echoes and the fading signature of their drives. On Earth, the celebration was immediate and overwhelming. When the news reached the planet that the Zakthron fleet was withdrawing, that the threat was over, that they were safe, the reaction was explosive. Every major city erupted in spontaneous parties. People poured into the streets, laughing, crying, embracing strangers. Fireworks lit the sky. Music played from every corner. The relief was so profound it was almost painful. But not everyone celebrated. Maria and Carlos Rodriguez sat in their living room, the sounds of celebration filtering through their windows, and they held each other and wept. Their daughter was gone. Emma was safe in some incomprehensible way with the Drakthorn, but she was gone. The videos she had recorded played on the screen in front of them, her small voice telling them she loved them, that she was okay, that she hoped they would be happy. Their son Miguel, only 3 years old, kept asking when Emma was coming home. They had tried to explain, but how do you make a 3-year-old understand that his sister had saved the world? How do you explain that she would never come back? President Okonkwo addressed the world that evening. She stood at the podium, her face showing the strain of the past weeks, but also profound relief. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth hung in a display of unity. "People of Earth," she began, her voice carrying to billions of listeners. "Today we have been delivered from the brink of extinction. The Zakthron Empire has withdrawn, and we have been assured that they will not return. We are safe because of the Drakthorn, because of an ancient compact that we barely understood even as we invoked it." She paused, her expression becoming somber. "But we must never forget the price of our survival." Emma Rodriguez, a 7-year-old child from Phoenix, Arizona, gave herself so that all of us could live. She is with the Drakthorn now, and we do not know what that truly means. We may never know, but we owe her everything. The president's voice strengthened. "I am establishing the Emma Rodriguez Foundation, dedicated to ensuring that we become worthy of her sacrifice. We will invest in education, in science, in space exploration, in everything that makes humanity better. We will ensure that the species she saved becomes something magnificent, something that justifies what she gave. We will tell her story to every generation so that no one ever forgets what was done to save us." Across the planet, in millions of homes and gathering places, people raised glasses, glasses of water, hands, whatever they had, in silent tribute to Emma Rodriguez. Parents held their children tighter. Teachers made plans for lessons about sacrifice and courage. Artists began creating memorials. Writers started composing songs and stories. In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Ross sat alone long after the other delegates had left. The celebrations were happening there too. Species that had feared for humanity's extinction, now welcoming them as permanent members of the community. No longer the newest or weakest, but protected by powers older than any current government. But Ross could only think of Emma, of her small hand waving at the camera, of the trust in her eyes when she had walked into the airlock. He had lived 53 years, had seen wars and disasters and triumphs, but nothing had ever felt as heavy as this. They had saved humanity, but they had done it by giving away a child. His communication device chimed. A message from Earth, from the Rodriguez family. He hesitated, then opened it. It was simple, just a few words. "Thank you for trying to find another way. We know you did everything possible. We don't blame you. We just wanted you to know that." Ross read it 3 times, tears running down his face. Then he saved it, archived it, where he would be able to access it whenever he needed to remember why he did this job, why any of this mattered. Far across the galaxy, in space so deep and remote that no ordinary vessel could reach it, Emma Rodriguez opened her eyes. She was no longer in her spacesuit. She was no longer in any environment she could recognize. She stood in a vast chamber that seemed to be made of crystallized light, where physics operated according to rules she didn't understand, but somehow could perceive. The dragon was there, but different than it had been. Smaller, more contained, its form shifting between physical and something else entirely. It looked at her with those ancient eyes, and Emma felt no fear. She had expected to be afraid, had thought she might cry or want to go home. But standing here in this impossible place, she felt only curiosity and a strange sense of rightness. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice sounding clear and strong despite everything. "You are in the place between," the dragon responded, its voice no longer overwhelming but gentle, almost kind. "You are in the space where we train those who have been given to us, where we teach them what they must become." "What will I become?" The dragon's expression changed, became something that might have been a smile. "That depends entirely on you, Emma Rodriguez. We do not erase who you were. We do not destroy the human child you are. We simply offer you the chance to grow into something more. Something that can stand between your people and any threat. Something that can help guide humanity through the dangerous years ahead." Emma considered this. She thought about her parents, her brother, her home. The memories were already becoming strange, distant in ways that should have been frightening, but instead felt natural, like she was looking at photographs of someone else's life. "Will I remember them? My family?" "You will remember that you loved them," the dragon said. "You will remember that they loved you. The details will fade, but the core truth will remain. That love is what brought you here, what made you willing to sacrifice yourself. We will not take that from you. We will build upon it." "Okay," Emma said. She clutched her stuffed elephant, the only thing she had brought from her old life. "I'm ready." The dragon nodded, a gesture that seemed strange coming from such a creature but somehow felt appropriate. "Then let us begin. You have much to learn, Emma. The Drakthorn protect many species, but we do so because we were once saved ourselves, long ago when the universe was young. We understand what it means to face extinction, to need help from powers greater than ourselves. Now we pass that forward, and you, child of humanity, will help us continue that ancient duty." Lights began to swirl around Emma, colors she had never seen before, energies that hummed with purpose and possibility. She felt herself changing, not physically yet, but in ways more fundamental. Her consciousness began to expand, to touch on concepts and ideas that had no words in any human language. The last thought she had in purely human terms was simple and clear. She had done the right thing. Her family would live. Her world would survive. And whatever she became next, it would be in service of that same love that had brought her here. Then Emma Rodriguez began her transformation into something humanity would not see again for many years, and when they did, they would barely recognize what she had become. 25 years had passed since Emma Rodriguez disappeared into the vastness of space with the Drakthorn. Earth had changed dramatically in that time. The crisis with the Zakthron had fundamentally altered humanity's approach to the galaxy. No longer content to be the weakest species, dependent on ancient protectors, humans had thrown themselves into advancement with fierce determination. The Emma Rodriguez Foundation had grown into the largest educational and research institution humanity had ever created. Millions of students passed through its programs, inspired by the story of a 7-year-old girl who had saved her entire species. Scientists working under its banner had made breakthrough after breakthrough, advancing human technology at a pace that shocked other council species. Humanity had spread beyond Earth, establishing colonies on 17 worlds and building shipyards that produced vessels incorporating both human innovation and carefully learned alien technology. They were still not a military powerhouse, but they were no longer defenseless. More importantly, they had become valuable members of the Galactic Council, contributing ideas and perspectives that only a species with their unique background could offer. Ambassador Ross had retired 5 years ago, but he still kept his apartment near the council station. He was 78 now, his hair completely white, his face lined with the marks of decades in diplomatic service. He had never forgotten Emma, had visited the Rodriguez family every year on the anniversary of her departure. He had watched Miguel grow up, had seen him become an astrophysicist, driven by the need to understand the universe that had taken his sister. Ross was in his apartment, reviewing old files out of nostalgia more than necessity, when his communication console chimed with an alert he had not heard in over 2 decades. It was the specific frequency used by the Drak'Tharn for their rare communications with protected species. His hands trembled as he accepted the connection. The holographic display activated, but instead of text, an actual transmission came through. A figure appeared, humanoid but changed in ways that were impossible to fully process. The woman was tall, easily 7 feet, with skin that seemed to contain shifting galaxies of light. Her eyes glowed with the same ancient intelligence he had seen in the dragon's gaze all those years ago, but there was something human in them too, something that recognized him. "Ambassador Ross," the figure said, and though the voice was different, deeper, and resonating with harmonics that shouldn't exist in human speech, he knew immediately who it was. "Emma?" His voice broke on the name. "I was Emma Rodriguez," she said gently. "I still am in the ways that matter, but I am also something more now. I am Drak'Tharn, trained and transformed, given purpose and power. I have come to deliver a message to humanity and to ask something difficult." Ross sat down heavily, his mind struggling to reconcile the small girl he had last seen with this being of obvious power standing before him. "Your family. They never stopped thinking about you. Your brother became a scientist because of you. Your parents aged harder than they should have, carrying the weight of what happened." Emma's expression softened, and for a moment, Ross saw the child she had been. "I know. I have watched from afar, though I could not contact them. The transformation does not allow for such ties until it is complete. Tell them I remember. Tell them the love that brought me to this choice has never faded. It has only grown, encompassing more than just my biological family, but the entire human species and beyond." She paused, her form shifting slightly as lights played across her skin. "But I am not here just for reunion. A threat approaches, one that concerns multiple species under Drak'Tharn protection. The Catharan swarm has awakened from its 1,000-year dormancy. They are consuming worlds at the edge of the galaxy, moving inward. They will reach human space in approximately 3 years. Ross felt ice form in his stomach. He knew of the Catharan from historical records. They were an ancient menace, a species of insectoid creatures that existed only to consume and reproduce. They had nearly conquered the entire galaxy 2,000 years ago, before being driven into hibernation through the combined efforts of dozens of species, including the Drak'Tharn. "Will the Drak'Tharn protect us?" he asked. "Yes," Emma said firmly, "but not in the way you might hope. The ancient Drak'Tharn are too few now. Many have passed into whatever lies beyond even our understanding. Those who remain must coordinate the defense of hundreds of worlds simultaneously. I am one of the new generation, the children taken from protected species and raised to help bear this burden. There are 37 of us now, from 17 different species. We have been trained precisely for this purpose." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "I can protect Earth. I have the power to stand between humanity and the swarm. But I cannot be everywhere at once. I need help from humans themselves. I need humanity to stand with me, not behind me. The protection the Drak'Tharn offers is not meant to make species weak. It is meant to give them time to grow strong enough to stand on their own." Ross straightened in his chair, diplomat instincts taking over despite the surreal nature of the conversation. "What exactly are you asking for?" "I am asking humanity to commit a fleet to the defense of the Outer Rim worlds. Not just human colonies, but the vulnerable worlds of 3 other species who do not have the military capacity to defend themselves. The Catharan will strike there first, testing defenses, consuming what they can before the main swarm arrives. If those worlds fall, billions will die, and the swarm will grow stronger. You want us to risk human lives for alien species? Emma's eyes flashed, and for a moment the power within her was visible, reality bending slightly around her form. I am asking humans to be what they have always claimed to be: brave, compassionate, willing to stand for what is right even when it is difficult. I am asking you to honor the sacrifice that saved you by making sacrifices for others. That is what it means to be worthy of protection, to eventually grow beyond needing it. Ross sat silently for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile that reached his tired eyes. You sound exactly like the speeches I used to write. Emma, you have been gone for 25 years, raised by dragon gods in places humans cannot imagine, and you still sound like you were born in Phoenix. Arizona. She laughed, and the sound was both human and something far greater. My teachers told me I was particularly stubborn about retaining certain aspects of my original personality. They found it frustrating, but eventually accepted it as simply who I am. The Drakthar do not make us into copies of themselves. They teach us to be the best version of what we already were. I will bring this to the council, Ross said. I cannot promise what they will decide, but I will argue in favor. You are right. We have spent 25 years saying we wanted to be worthy of what you did. Now we have the chance to prove it. I ask for nothing more than the honest effort, Emma said. She paused, then added quietly, Could you arrange for me to speak to my family? I know it has been so long. I know I am not what they remember. But I need them to know I am still their daughter in the ways that truly matter. I will personally ensure it, Ross promised, though I warn you, your brother is going to have about 10,000 questions about Drakthar physics and dimensional mechanics. Emma smiled. I look forward to it. I have missed having someone question everything I say. My teachers were far too polite about it. The transmission ended, and Ross immediately began making calls. First to Earth's government, then to the council, then to the Rodriguez family. Within hours, the message had spread across human space and beyond. The child who had saved humanity had returned, not as the girl who left, but as something magnificent and powerful, and she was asking them to stand with her against a threat that could destroy civilizations. The debate that followed was fierce. There were those who argued that humanity had done enough, that they should focus on defending their own worlds and let others fend for themselves. There were practical concerns about committing military resources to protecting alien colonies. There were fears about casualties, about political implications, about resources and logistics. But there were also millions who remembered what it meant when a child gave up everything to save them. There were families who told their children Emma's story every year. There were military officers who had trained their entire careers hoping to be worthy of her sacrifice. There were scientists whose breakthroughs had been driven by the need to ensure she had not given herself for a species that remained weak and dependent. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Humanity would commit 30 ships, 50,000 personnel, and significant resources to the defense of the Outer Rim. It was not a token force. It was a real commitment, one that would strain human military capacity, but not break it. It was exactly the kind of measured courage that showed growth without recklessness. When the decision was announced, Emma appeared again, this time in a broadcast to all of humanity. She stood in what looked like empty space, stars surrounding her, her form glowing with contained power. People of Earth, she said, using the formal address but with warmth in her voice. I have been gone for 25 years. I have learned things I cannot fully explain, become something I could never have imagined as a child, but I have never forgotten where I came from. I have never stopped being Emma Rodriguez from Phoenix, even as I became something more. She raised her hands, and the stars around her seemed to respond, swirling in patterns of light. I am one of the Drak'Tharn now, a guardian and protector. My purpose is to stand between the innocent and those who would destroy them. That is what I chose as a child, and that choice has defined everything I have become. Now I ask you to make a similar choice. Not to sacrifice yourselves, but to stand for something greater than your own immediate safety. Her expression softened. To my family, to my parents, Maria and Carlos, to my brother Miguel, I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. The memories of our life together are treasures I have carried through every moment of my transformation. I am sorry I could not come home. I am sorry for all the birthdays and holidays we missed, but I am not sorry for what I became. I am proud to be your daughter, and I am proud to be a guardian of humanity. Miguel Rodriguez was watching from his laboratory at the Emma Rodriguez Foundation headquarters. He was 30 now, a respected scientist in his own right. But in this moment, he was just a boy who had lost his sister and finally got to see her again. Tears ran down his face as he watched the broadcast. Their parents watched from their home in Phoenix, holding hands, seeing their daughter as something beyond their wildest comprehension, but still recognizing her in the way she tilted her head, in the cadence of her speech, in the fierce determination that had always defined her. "She's beautiful," Maria whispered. "She saved everyone," Carlos said quietly. "And she is still our Emma." Across human space, similar scenes played out in millions of homes. People saw Emma not as some remote deity or incomprehensible alien being, but as one of them who had grown into something amazing. They saw proof that human courage, human compassion, human determination could matter even on a galactic scale. 3 months later, the human fleet departed for the Outer Rim. It was the largest military deployment humanity had ever attempted, ships carrying personnel who had trained extensively for this moment. They knew the risks. They knew some of them would not return. But they went anyway because Emma Rodriguez had shown them that sometimes courage meant doing what was right even when it cost everything. Emma was there when they arrived, coordinating with the other Drak'Tharn guardians, organizing defenses, preparing the vulnerable worlds for what was coming. She worked alongside human commanders, and they found her surprisingly easy to work with. She had power beyond their comprehension, but she listened to their tactical suggestions, respected their expertise, treated them as partners rather than subordinates. Lieutenant Commander Jackson had served in the fleet for 15 years. He had joined specifically because of Emma's story, had wanted to serve the species she had saved. Now he found himself working directly with her, helping coordinate defensive patterns around a colony world inhabited by the Thryn, a peaceful species of amphibious beings with no military tradition. "Emma," he said during a planning session, still getting used to the casual way she insisted they address her. "The Thryn colonists want to know if they should evacuate. They are asking about you specifically. They have heard stories." Emma looked at the holographic display showing the colony below. Millions of Thryn who had no way to defend themselves against what was coming. "Tell them that Emma Rodriguez once stood in empty space, wearing a child's spacesuit, and faced a being that could have destroyed her with a thought. Tell them that human courage is not about being unafraid, but about doing what needs to be done despite fear. Tell them that I will stand between them and the swarm, and that I am not alone because humanity has chosen to stand with me." She turned to Jackson, and he saw tears in those cosmic eyes. "Tell them that a species that would sacrifice a child to save itself also raised that child to know what sacrifice means. Tell them they are safe, because humanity remembers." Jackson saluted, something he had never thought he would do to a being of such power. But in that moment, she was not a cosmic guardian. She was Lieutenant Commander Emma Rodriguez, and she was family. When the Catharan swarm arrived 2 weeks later, they found not easy prey but determined resistance. 3 Draktharn guardians, including Emma, stood at the front of the defense. Behind them, ships from 4 different species, led by the human fleet, fought with coordinated precision. On the ground, the Thryn colonists had been taught basic defensive measures by human marines who had volunteered to stay planetside. The battle lasted 6 days. The swarm was relentless, throwing wave after wave of insectoid warriors against the defenses. The human fleet took heavy casualties. 17 ships were lost, 4,000 personnel killed, another 6,000 wounded. But they held. Every time the swarm pushed forward, they found Emma there, power blazing, tearing through their ranks with fury born from the knowledge that innocence sheltered behind her. She was not fighting alone. Human pilots flew combat runs that should have been impossible, their fighters weaving between swarm warriors to protect civilian evacuation ships. Human soldiers held defensive lines alongside Thryn militia, who had learned courage from their example. Human medics worked around the clock, treating wounded from 3 different species without distinction. On the 6th day, the swarm withdrew. They had lost more than they had gained, and there were easier targets elsewhere. The outer rim had proven too costly, the defense too fierce. The colony was saved, and with it, billions of lives across the vulnerable worlds. Emma stood in the aftermath, her form dimmed from exhaustion, surrounded by the wreckage of battle. Human ships limped into repair orbits. Thryn colonists emerged from shelters to find their world scarred but intact. And across the galaxy, species who had watched the battle unfold began to look at humanity differently. They were no longer just the species that had been saved by a child's sacrifice. They were the species that had honored that sacrifice by becoming saviors themselves. They were the species that would stand between others and extinction, just as Emma had stood for them. Ambassador Ross watched the aftermath reports from his apartment. He was 83 now, officially retired but still closely following galactic affairs. The casualty lists hurt. 4,000 dead, each one a person with family and dreams and futures that would never be realized. But they had died protecting others, had died proving that humanity had learned the lesson Emma had taught them. His console chimed with an incoming message. Emma's face appeared, tired but proud. "Ambassador," she said, "I wanted to thank you personally for bringing my request to the Council, for believing that humanity could be what I always knew they were." "We should be thanking you," Ross said. "You gave us a gift, Emma. Not just survival, but purpose. You showed us what we could be." "No," Emma said firmly. "I showed you what you already were. The courage was always there. I just helped you find it. That is what the Draktharn do. We do not make species better. We give them time and space to become what they have the potential to be." She paused, then added, "The swarm will return. This was just their initial probe. In 2 years, maybe 3, they will come in full force. Humanity will need to be ready. But I believe you will be. You have proven that the child who gave herself for her species did not do so in vain." "We will be ready," Ross promised. "And Emma, your parents want you to know they are proud of you. Your brother wants to discuss theoretical physics with you, and the entire species wants you to know that you are still one of us, no matter what you have become." Emma smiled, and in that smile, Ross saw the 7-year-old girl who had waved at the camera before stepping into the unknown. She was still there, still Emma, just grown into something extraordinary. "Tell them I love them," she said. "Tell them I am coming home properly this time, not to stay, but to visit, to see Earth again, to remember where I came from before I stand against what is coming next." The transmission ended, and Ross sat quietly in the aftermath. Humanity had been given a chance 25 years ago, purchased with the sacrifice of a child. Now they were proving worthy of it, one difficult choice at a time. Emma Rodriguez had saved humanity by giving herself to the Draktharn. But humanity had saved itself by learning from her example, by choosing courage over fear, by standing for others as she had stood for them. That was the real shock, the truth that no one had expected. The child offered to the dragon had become a guardian of galaxies. And the species that had offered her had become guardians in their own right, ready to stand beside her against whatever darkness came next. That was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to be worthy of the sacrifice that had saved them. And that was why, when Emma finally returned to Earth 3 months later, she was greeted not with worship or fear, but with recognition. She was one of them, forever and always, no matter how far she had traveled or how much she had changed. The galaxy had offered humanity a choice between extinction and sacrifice. Humanity had chosen sacrifice and received salvation. Now they chose to offer that same salvation to others, and in doing so, they became something the galaxy had rarely seen. They became a species worthy of the ancient protection, worthy of their guardian, worthy of the name human. And Emma Rodriguez, standing once more on Earth's soil, her cosmic power contained within mortal form, smiled as she watched children play in parks that existed only because she had been willing to walk into darkness 25 years ago. She had made the right choice, and her species had proven that they deserved the chance she had given them. That was what shocked everyone. Not that a child could be brave enough to sacrifice herself, but that an entire species could be brave enough to honor that sacrifice by becoming something worth saving.